trying to figure out, thinking about tech debt and modernizing legacy software in terms of like business capabilities. Because a lot of the time you're spending when you're doing your digital stuff is talking about how you want business outcomes and business value and all sorts of things like that. And I think what this can result in is that over the years you accumulate a bunch of technical decisions that you made that allowed you to address those business outcomes to get features in production over other things. And it also means you don't spend so much time on, what did we used to call them, functional requirements, on maintaining a good infrastructure in the background. Now, I think what a lot of this results in is frequently you end up with too much legacy to support, right? And it slows you down and you can't make changes to it fast enough. And, that's no good for anyone. So as a reference, I like to collect little anecdotes, as you know. And this is some stuff from a recent survey that we at VMware commissioned Forrester to do. You can see the link down there. But it really does show you that the issue that people have a lot is that they spend way too much time supporting their legacy applications, right? And I think you can see the numbers there. And I think what that results in, is people who don't really deploy software very frequently. So how do people get through doing this? Well, when we work with people and, organizations I talk with, it's not so much that they focus on just replatforming and rewriting things and kind of thinking about, in a technical way, how do we just move this thing over? But more of what they're focused on, not more of, but what they also focus on is making sure that they have a pretty rigorous way of analyzing it, right? Going through and finding out of those hundreds or thousands of applications, which ones should be modernized because they have a good reason to be either replatformed, just move to a different platform, or refactored, that is rewritten, and they even, refactored and they do the same thing essentially. Or, they might also think about like retiring it. Do they even need to use that or not? So that's kind of like the background that you have. And a lot of these limitations are, they could be database driven, like we need to add new fields, we need to search for new things that we have in there, and we have to go back to this other team to do that. Or it could be an ERP system that you're working with, right? Like, one of my favorite examples is at a car company at Daimler in their Mercedes division. They showed together listing cars in their sort of front end search engine, and also Sprinter vans. And those are two different data sources to kind of mix together and have access to. Governance can be a legacy thing, all sorts of things like that. So I think the issue, what becomes difficult is thinking through, so how do we make that a priority on the business side of things? And I was I was listening to the most recent book, about Amazon that's been out. That's out at the moment. Oh, look, you can see my little thing over there. So you got too much head space. But what are you gonna do? Maybe if I sit up straight, like my elders were always telling me I should do. Anyways, I was reading this recent book from Amazon. Let's go. We can search for it and I'll show it to you. There's my other camera. See, my wife brought me over some nice mint thing. Anyhow, let me come over here and you'll see, what is it called? We reviewed this on Software Defined Talk, but it's essentially called Working Backwards. That's right. Now, there's a lot interesting to be said about this book. I think primarily, it's interesting, as we talk about in our Software Defined Talk review. There are some things that, like, at least in this narrative about how Amazon operates, that are different. But I think it's mostly just around the passion and the caring that they have. There's the famous only writing a 6-page memo. Anyhow, what you read in here, what kind of got me started down this path, is sometime in the mid-2000s, there was this realization over there at Amazon that they had these problems, right? That the issue that they were facing was that they couldn't try out new things in their retail site, right? New ways of shipping things. Basically, their software was, it took too long to change, and I assume there were too many meetings, too much collaboration, and not enough innovation, if you will. That was an interesting point, worded differently, that they're coordinating too much with each other, right? And so instead, they wanted to build a system. One, they wanted to modernize the monolith, right, so that it could be componentized, so that you could do things on it rapidly. And that was like a multi-year process that they went through, right? And again, this is at Amazon, one of the companies people want to innovate. But they recognized all the way up to the CEO and the executive team level that the issue that they had, one of the issues that they had business-wise, was that their technology was too slow to change and didn't allow them to experiment and try new things, whether it was, I think in the time, the affiliate program or, whatever kind of shipping stuff they wanted to do, all these kind of core business things that Amazon innovated and we just take for granted. Now, you would see similar things in other industries, especially over the past year. When it comes to implementing, contactless payment with your phone or, speeding up approval processes or workflows, all these sorts of things that oftentimes when you go to add features to your software, it takes a long time to do. Anyhow, that's something to start thinking about. How do we go through and think about agility, infrastructure agility, our architectural agility as a business capability that we have? And I think that's going to take a lot of time for us as a whole in the business world to think about it that way, and not just think about it as like, I don't know, some nerd stuff in the IT world, but to really think about and start asking, if I am outside of the IT world, I'm one of the corporate leaders, do we have the business capabilities to quickly add features, remove features? Do we have agility around all of that? And that's a business capability that I think increasingly executives need to be responsible for and build up. Again, like you see kind of when Amazon was modernizing their monolith, and lots of organizations we work with, they get that ability to more rapidly add features and add things. They get that agility in their infrastructure rather than it being kind of long monolithic things to modify. So speaking of, we have a webinar coming up here in EMEA, if you're in the Europe area, and it goes over that kind of methodical process that we work with people doing. And it really starts with a categorizing of the applications that you have, discovering what they are, thinking about the business value of each of them, how they strategically fit in, and then analyzing technically, like, what's the best way to go about? Do we re-platform it? Do we refactor it? Do we rewrite it? Do we retire it? Is that 4 R's? I forget how many there are. But I think that's the thing that I've noticed when I've talked with people in large organizations when they go through legacy changes or when they go through modernizing their platform, their portfolio, is they have, instead of kind of intuitively thinking about like, we should modernize this one, it's in the way, or here's one that people are complaining about, kind of doing the hair on fire analysis. There's a very, very disciplined and frequent portfolio analysis they go through, and we've got a pretty good toolkit and some free tools to use and some paid services and other tools that help you look at your portfolio and categorize it based on what's valuable and what's technically feasible. And I think the important part is you start on it very quickly so that you can get a sense of how things are going and learn, and then you go through that loop over and over again, so you're constantly learning what works for you and getting better. Anyhow, you should register for that webinar. It's June 3rd. It's going to be at 2:30 Central European Time, as you can see. Let me actually double check that, because, yep, there you go. And you'll have Matt Russell, he's been around for quite some time, and he helps up with this practice a lot. And I've seen a little preview or seen him present this before, and you'll get a sense of like how to put that strategy in place. So that's the first part of what I wanted to go over today. The other thing I wanted to do is preview a little bit of, I think I have a blog post coming out eventually about our State of Kubernetes 2021 survey. I wrote a blog post about the one that we had last year. Yeah, I kind of forget where that is. But, I was thinking about going over this today, and I remember it came across this part of it, right? Now, this is a part of the survey, always when you have a year-over-year survey, especially about something like Kubernetes, you're always asking, like, what's going wrong? What problems do you have? And I think, that's always interesting to look at. Now, here in the survey, right, and I'll kind of give a little bit of some other interesting things in this survey. This, you see, we compare it from last year's 2020 to 2021. And I think this one, pertinent to what I was just talking about, And there's still integration challenges abound, right? They've actually increased. Now, we don't really in the survey. Maybe I should go look at the I have the extended questions, the sort of raw data, if you will. I'm not sure how integration is defined, but you can see that there's been an increase in people when they're setting up Kubernetes. They need to work with other services, whether it's infrastructure services or more application-centric things. I think this is interesting. One, that it kind of goes back to show that point that indeed integrating with legacy stuff and not having updated your legacy portfolio is a problem. But I think it also shows a maturity and a spread of Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes is either a relatively or extremely new technology in most organizations. And so when you introduce something as cross-cutting and foundation, something that is as generic and is I'm using all these jargony terms, but something that's used by a lot of stuff, a lot of applications, you're going to start bumping up against and encountering all sorts of issues and things to integrate with, right? So as Kubernetes gets used more and more, thinking about it, you would expect this problem to come up, that there's more integration problems that you have because you'll be encountering newer things. You'll be encountering lots of existing things. So you see that going up some more. So I'm going to predict that next year when we do this survey, there's going to be, it might be like plus or minus a few points, at least the same, if not go up, because people are going to be integrating with new things. We might even see some issues integrating with, as we used to call it, COTS, or commercial off-the-shelf applications, namely ERP systems and things like that. Now, looking at the survey, let's just walk through it really quickly, and maybe I'll go over it some more when the blog post comes out. But there's a little bit of the demographics if you're into that kind of thing. Let me make sure we got the right, zoom to fit. Okay, there we go. But you can see there's 357 people that were were qualified, as I say, which means they were selected based on the demographics that they have. And you can see a little bit of the breakdown there. But let's go through this, and you can get a copy of this for free. If you go to tanzu.vmware.com, you can find it somewhere. I'll put a link in the notes wherever you're watching this that you can get to it. But you can see there's been a change of people running Kubernetes in production, right? So it's steadily going up. And this is like more or less the theme of the blog post that I wrote, is that, we're just seeing maturity and spreading, more and more use of it. Not that much of a searing insight, but it's the way that I kind of look through surveys like this. And you can see, obviously, people have benefits. Like this is a bit of a, most everyone finds it beneficial. But it's interesting to look at like what the benefits are, right? And being application centric, like the one that I care about essentially the most is this one here, shortening software development cycle, right? Which is great. Like, the more developer productivity you have, the faster you can get apps into production and things like that. I think the more benefit that you'll be having. Now, I think in the raw data that I have somewhere, you can see some year-over-year comparison. I kind of forget what that is. But, and then there's people running in multi-cloud, right, where it's interesting to see that momentum. Here is a rank of, you can see year-over-year of where people get their Kubernetes stuff, right? There we are. They're in the, I forget which color is which. I remember the way they ordered this sort of. Oh yeah, so green is this year. Kind of rankled me a little bit, but you can see a rise in use of our stuff there, which is encouraging to see. Now that we have a full Kubernetes, multiple versions of it, not versions, but multiple solutions, if you will. You got basic, advanced, and other ones. You can tell that I have not memorized them, which is a little embarrassing, but it's fun to see like what usage is out there, what people are doing. And then this is the last one that I'll go over. And again, you can go download this if you either click down below, I'll put a link to it, or you look around elsewhere. And, this is especially interesting for vendors to know who's involved in doing the selection of the Kubernetes distro that you're using. And let me see if this next one goes over here. Yeah. So I remember there's another interesting thing in the raw data about this. But first of all, let's look at the it looks like if you look at if there's clear ownership, which is an interesting question, right? Like I guess if there's clear ownership, in theory, the decision making is more centralized and will go through faster. But you can see there's been a slightly, at least in the survey base, slightly more refinement in who owns it, right? So there's less of people worried about, there's less clarity when it comes to ownership, a pretty big drop as it shows. And now where does it list the actual yeah, so here we go. So it doesn't really rank which ones are involved most of the time, but if you look at the percentage of time that each of these roles are involved, right, you still have slightly more operations people, the operations people who are building and providing that platform, and you still have huge representation from development teams and application owners. I think here is more of a business, the people who own that application, the people who use that software to help run their organization, their business, or whatever. But you can see that the operators and the developers are the ones driving this influence, right? Which means if you are working on getting Kubernetes in place, right, these are the two groups that you will obviously appeal to. And I suspect most people, I guess it shows here, right, most of it comes out of, well, you could think of it both ways, right? Like if you're a developer, obviously you need to work with the operations people to do it, probably because you're going to want them to run it and be responsible for it so you can work on your applications. And if you're an operations person, and it's sometimes surprising how much this comes up when people I talk with, but it's really important to start working with developers as your customers right away, right? To find a few teams of developers and start to involve them in gathering up what's needed, testing out the various distros that you're going to use, POCing it, coming up with policies, and really defining from a platform operations team, the people running Kubernetes, what is it that your customers, developers want from it. So that's a little bit of two things to go over today. One, let's go summarize. You got all sorts of legacy stuff, and I'm trying to figure out how to think about making sure you modernize your legacy stuff in terms of business capabilities, right? Not just some kind of back burner, more Lockean IT thing, because it really is something that is it's one of those things right underneath the waterline that people, as a whole, like in a big picture, don't pay attention to. And the longer you don't pay attention to it, the more chances are that you're going to need that agility and infrastructure, and you don't really end up having it. And then also, again, you can go in the show notes to find this. We've got our State of Kubernetes survey. It's been out for a couple of weeks now, maybe even 3 or so. But I think it's especially because it has at least 2 years of year over year. And there's a few areas where we refer to the, I think it was even the 2018. We did the original one quite some time ago. But there's year over year on some of them. But it's a good way to kind of go in and see, as it implies, what's up with Kubernetes adoption and organization, what they're struggling with, and things like that. So as a reminder, if you're interested in kind of modernizing your application and in your infrastructure, you should go check out this webinar that we have on June 3rd. It'll be a great introduction to how you assess the portfolio of hundreds and thousands of applications you have, a very rigorous discipline process to go through and identify which ones to start working with, so you can learn how to do your modernization, whether you're replatforming it, refactoring it, retiring it, or rewriting it. And also, I think the important thing, the thing that's a little bit different about how we do it with organizations and what organizations we end up doing, is there's this kind of learning effect where you're ensuring that you're learning what it is to modernize, what the skills are, what the tools are, and we work with you to do that. But there's the whole methodology and practice behind it, so you can get a really good overview and kind of start kicking it off on your own and think about how we might help you out if you check out that webinar on June 3rd. So as always, if you want to get the archives for this, find the show notes. You can go to tanzutalk.com. There'll be a somewhere up there. There'll be a little videos link you can click on, and you can find the archives and things that I've mentioned. And with that, we'll see everyone next time.